Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is SB, and today I decided to redo one of my first tutorials on here on tatting, and it is this tatted diamond slash square. I found that the first video was a little chatty. I'm gonna try to keep this one shorter, or I am gonna keep it shorter. And we are going to be working off of this pattern here, and I was inspired by Frivole to do this pattern, and she does shuttle tatting, and I wanted to convert it to a needle tatted pattern. What you're going to need is, of course, your tatting needle. I am using the biggest size that I have available to me, which is a size 3, I believe. Yeah, a size 3. It could be a 5, I'm not sure. And you're gonna need a crochet hook, preferably one that's a little smaller than mine, because this is what we're gonna be using to join our picots to our rings. You're gonna need scissors, and you're also gonna need some tatting thread or crochet thread, which I'm using here. This is a number 10 crochet thread by Red Heart. And yeah, and you're just gonna need a little bit of patience because it can get a little frustrating if you're just starting out. So yeah, let's get to the tutorial. Okay, first things first, we're gonna thread our needle, being sure to leave a nice long tail. And we're going to be working off of our ball, so do not cut your yarn. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to make a loop with our ball yarn and begin working our first ring of our first round. So for our first ring, we are going to be working 3 double knots and a picot. That's 2 and 3, picot, 3 double knots, picot, 3 double knots, picot, 3 double knots, picot, 3 double knots, picot, 3 double knots. And now we are going to be closing our ring. And to do this, we're just going to loop our tail thread around our thumb or pinky or something to hold it into place. And we're going to pull everything through, holding our knots in our hand. I did it wrong right here. It's actually supposed to be the other way, but I show it again later on in the video. The concept is there. That's what happens sometimes, you make mistakes. And be sure to leave your tail thread a little shorter than what I did. This is what I'm struggling with right here. And don't forget to knot your ring closed, because otherwise it's going to stay open. I did forget to do that right here, but that's fine. It all worked out in the end. So now we're going to be working our second ring of our first round. And the second ring is still worked similarly to the first one, except after our first 3 double knots, we are going to be joining to our first picot of our last ring. Okay, this is where you're going to need your crochet hook because we're going to be joining our second ring to our first ring. As you can see here, you're going to go through the front to the back and loop up your yarn and slip it onto your needle. And now you're going to be finishing that half knot there to complete your double knot. And you're going to continue on with 2 double knots. And a picot. And you're just going to continue your pattern. Okay, and now we're going to be closing our ring. And like I said earlier, to do this, you're just going to hold your tail thread with your pinky or your thumb, making sure that you have a short tail so it doesn't get tangled, and just pull everything through, going slowly so you don't get tangled. And you're going to loop your thread in there and just close off your second ring, being sure to knot to close your ring. And to do this, I go up behind the yarn or the ball thread and behind my tail thread, and I just pull through. And now we're going to be starting our third ring, which is worked exactly the same way as the second ring. So I'm going to speed up the video and hopefully you get the gist of it. Next, we're going to be working a split ring, and this is basically we're going to be working on the left side of the ring, working only half of the stitches. So we're going to do 3 double knots, and we're going to join to our last ring that we did. And we're going to be completing that half knot, and we're going to work 2 double knots. And a picot and 3 double knots. And that completes our first half of our split ring. So now we are going to be turning our work, and we're going to be working on the eye side of our needle. And we're going to be working with our tail yarn instead of our ball yarn. And we're going to be working our other half of our stitches. So go ahead and pull your tail yarn out of the eye. And kind of get things out of the way, because we're going to be working here 3 double knots, but we're going to be working them backwards. So we're going to start with our second half of our double knot. So it's going to be 3 double knots. So this one's 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to join to our ring in the same manner that we've been joining. And we're going to complete that half knot. So that's 1, 2, 3 double knots, picot, 1, 2, and 3 double knots, and that completes our second half of our split ring. And now we're going to turn everything around and re-thread our needle. Being sure to leave a shortish tail so it doesn't get tangled. And now we're going to close our split ring the exact same way you close every other ring. And there we go. There is our split ring. Make sure to tie off your ring so it doesn't come loose. Okay, and here I'm just showing what we just finished and what we're going to be working on next. So now I'm just going to knot off my split ring because I didn't do that in the previous scene. Alright, and now we're going to make our mock picot. And I'm going to do it the exact same way that I knot off my rings. Except I'm going to leave a little tail, like little threads showing, so that way it looks like a picot. And I'm going to go ahead and knot it one more time to lock that in place. And now we are going to be working round 2, and this is going to be our corner ring. Don't forget to knot off your ring once you get your ring closed. And what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be doing a lock join. So right here, we're just going to go through that mock picot from the front to the back. And this is going to create a lock join, and I say that in quotation marks. So we're just going to do 2 knots right here just to make sure that it's going to stay in place. And this is just going to make your work move around because we are not turning at all during this whole pattern. So the next step is to do our Josephine knot, which is essentially just half knots. And we're going to be working the second half of our double knot. Work 3 half knots. And then we are going to be joining to our picot in our first ring. And this join is not going to count as part of the Josephine knot, so do not count this one. And we are going to be doing 4 half knots. And now we're going to be doing a picot. And this picot does not count, and we're going to be doing 3 half knots to complete our Josephine knot. And just close your ring like you would do normally. Be sure to knot off your Josephine knot, just like every other ring in needle tatting. You have to knot it off. And our next step would be to go ahead and do our lock join to the next picot in the previous round. So you'll see it right here, what I mean. Be sure to double knot this to ensure that it's going to be secure. And then we'll be starting our next ring, which is going to be the center ring. Now this ring you're going to be joining to the Josephine knot, and it's also going to include a longer picot. So just take note of that. So now we're going to lock join to that picot right there. And remember, we're always going to be going through from the front to the back and pulling through your needle thread and kind of holding it close, pinching it right where you want it. And we're going to go ahead and lock that in place with a couple of knots. Next up is another Josephine knot, which is going to be worked exactly the same way as the first one. So just go ahead and do that. Okay, so don't forget to be doing your lock joins to the picot of the previous round. That's going to make sure that everything is sitting correctly. Okay, next up is our second corner ring. And to do this, we're going to start with 2 double knots. And we're going to be joining to the picot on our Josephine knot. And then this is going to be worked exactly the same way as our first corner ring for the rest of it. And we're going to be lock joining to the picot right below our corner ring. Okay, just make sure that you knot off your rings after you complete them. And now we're going to be doing our lock join, which is going to be right below where we made our ring. And it's that picot right there. Being sure to go from front to back, pulling through your yarn and knotting off at least twice, just to ensure that it's going to be stable. Okay, after you complete this ring, this is where we are going to start repeating the pattern with the Josephine knot, the center ring, and then Josephine knot, and the corner ring. And we're almost done, so I'll meet you back here on the last Josephine knot. Okay, so I just finished my last center ring, and I'm just going to lock join to that picot from the first round. And you're just going to do this in a similar fashion, making sure that you don't tangle anything up. After all, this is the last stretch. Okay, here we are at the last Josephine knot. This is going to be worked the same way by doing 3 half knots and then joining to our center ring. Okay, next we are going to be doing the other part of the Josephine knot, which is going to be 4 half knots. And now this is where we're going to be joining to our first ring of the round. And to do this, you're going to want to make sure that you can see that picot right there. And you're basically just going to fold it behind where you're working. So you're going to want the right side facing away from you. And you're going to be joining exactly the same way you would join any other join. And you're going to try to get it as close as you can to the working yarn. So now you're just going to get your crochet hook and you're going to insert it into that picot. And you're going to grab your yarn and you're going to pull through. Okay, now that we have our picot attached or joined, we are going to be working on the opposite side because as you can see, it kind of twists. So I'm going to turn my work and do my 3 half knots right here. And now we're going to turn it back around. And I'm going to try to get everything straightened out because this is where it gets a little frustrating because it wants to go the wrong way. And pinch kind of hard and pull through very slowly to make sure everything stays in place. And don't do what I did right there. And just get everything seated correctly. And then go ahead and tie off your Josephine knot because this is the last step in completing this square/diamond. So yeah, you're finished. All you have to do now is weave in some ends and you're done. Admire your work. And we're done. I hope you made it through the whole tutorial and that this one was a little more informative than my very first one. The very first one is still up. I will link it up in the cards section here if you want to go check that out. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!